Last minute tweaks. All right, let's see. Can you guys hear me? I can't tell if anybody can hear me or not, but I'm gonna assume y'all can hear me. If so, thank you for joining me on this Saturday morning, evening, night, wherever you are in the world. Don't have a whole lot of expectations for this video. I don't know how long this is gonna go for, but figured I'd start a build from scratch, see how long it goes. Maybe we'll do it to completion. Maybe we'll just call it around an hour, 2 hours. I don't know, but figure it'll be a nice chill video. Let's do this. I'll be building. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can along the way. Might be a little bit difficult, but we're celebrating 35 Ks. That's a lot of Ks. 35,000 nerds are out there that are into, you know, e-bikes, custom-made e-bikes. And there's probably some of them that are just into Mr. Buddy heater reviews. That's an inside joke. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm really grateful. This is still crazy that there's that many people into this channel. So yeah, let's go into this. I'm gonna start building this. Trying to do my best to answer as many questions as I can. If you have questions that I don't get to, I do consultations, one-on-one consultations. We could either do video, Zoom calls, is what I was doing all morning, or just phone call. If you got questions about building a bike, buying a bike, whatever. It's what I obsess about, especially custom building bikes. If you have a problem, I've probably been through it myself. If you're having problems, I've been through it. I feel like a counselor. That's what I should call it, the e-bike counselor. All right, so I'm just gonna start building this. I'm gonna talk about what I'm doing. I got my wife is off screen. She's probably gonna be feeding me some questions if there's some burning ones, and if I am tongue-tied and I can't talk, I got nothing to talk about, she'll probably feed me some questions. But otherwise, I'm just gonna do the install, kind of talk about what I'm doing. That was me. I had this on there. So this is a brand new bike. Came with the pedals off already, so I don't have to take the pedals off. Generally, if you're doing a bike, you'd want to start with this on the ground so you could get leverage, because you don't want to be doing this with it on the stand. Most of these are an 8mm. And you know, you might want to do this off the ground too, but you know, we're already here. So we're flying without a safety net here. I might be making some mistakes along the way. You know, this is the first ever live conversion in the history of the world. So we're all making history here. I think that's pretty cool. So, crank bolts, lefty-loosey. I'm going to jump over to the other side, do the same thing. And this is a brand new bike, so they aren't too difficult to get off. How's audio? Is anybody giving me a thumbs up on audio? Sounds great. You sound great. Now we're going to take our crank puller. I like to make sure that this goes in by hand first. Never want to force this. So many people jump to forcing it on. They jump to their wrench and they get it on there. Like that went in about 8 threads. So this, I feel confident on this. Otherwise, I'd take a wrench and I'd tighten it down more. But I know that bit pretty well. And again, this is something you might want to do off of the stand, but this is a brand new bike, so none of these parts are got years and years of neglect and rust and corrosion on it, so these things are coming off fairly simple. So I'll go around and do it to the other side. Huh?
Can you put the camera so it's sharper?
Oh, use the back side of the camera? Yeah, I probably can. Get over there. Sorry for any amateur production-ness. I'm just a dude in a shed, you know, doing the best we can. Hopefully this comes out all right. How are we doing on questions? Got any gold mines?
No.
No gold mines? Wow, she's a critic of the questions, guys. Okay, got this crank arm off. I'm gonna try to flip the camera around so it's a little bit sharper. Maybe I could even go wide angle lens. Sorry, I should have done this pre-production. How's that? A little upside downish. Okay, sorry about this. Total amateur hour.
Alright, we got a question. Can you convert a modern mountain bike with Crestfit bottom bracket? If so, what motor fits?
With a press fit bottom bracket? Yeah, you could do press fit bottom brackets. So press fits, this is a standard BSA bottom bracket, which is like 33.5 or 34 millimeters in diameter. Press fits are, I think, 46. So they're just bigger. They're like this big. So the motor spindles just want to flop around in there and not really hang tight. So all you need, I don't have one on me, but you just need a press fit to BSA adapter. Same thing if you have like a BB30 or even some, like if you have like a single crank design like from the old Schwinns or even like some of the newer crappier Schwinns, you would just need to fill that hole in so that the motor sits in there pretty tight. I'm actually getting some in from Lecky, which they're eccentric bottom brackets. So sometimes those press fits don't totally work out great, but Lecky has this one where it's offset and it's eccentric. So I'm really excited to get those in. We'll see how that goes. Okay, I'm gonna do something blasphemous here, guys. Don't say you saw it here. Impact bottom bracket tool. You didn't see it here. I'm gonna get a lot of crap for this, I bet. But this makes my life a lot easier. Because you should never use power tools on a bicycle in general, unless you're a trained professional under supervision. Boom, came out real fast. So I don't like to waste time. Time saver. All right, bottom bracket is out. That thing is just ready to go. Just hang the motor in there a little bit. Oh, nice. That's a nice. I don't like to button this up, but I am going to put the lock rings on it on the other side just to hold it so it doesn't fall out and damage the motor. So I'll just throw the inner lock ring on it real quick. That way it's not going to go anywhere. I don't want to tighten these down until I get the wiring all done, all situated, because you don't want to have to take that thing on and off. It's just a pain. So I'm going to work up here and just work down. So I'm going to put the display on.
Question. What's the best e-bike lock and chain for public bike racks?
Kryptonite, forget about it. I would go with that. There's also an Avis, I think it's the Bordeaux 6500. But probably the Kryptonite, forget about it. I think they even like warranty, or what is it called? If your bike gets stolen when you're using that lock, they'll give you up to like $4,000 or $5,000. And I think it's also rated for up to motorcycles as well. And honestly, like I would be looking at motorcycle locks as well, but the Kryptonite, forget about it, is the one I would be getting. Okay, I'm just going to put the display up here, and then I'm going to start taking off these hand grips. Normally I would just use my compressor and just shoot these hand grips off, but for the sake of filming, I don't want to run the compressor. So there's a couple different ways on how to get this off. And a lot of you guys at home probably don't have a compressor with, you know, that nozzle that shoots air out, like, so I try to not show videos on things that you probably don't have access to, you know, the high-end tools. So I'll kind of do things in a mixture of backyard mechanic and professional mechanic. So I'm just going to loosen up the gear shift sensor and the brake lever just to give me a little bit of room. Got a little techno in the morning. So all I'm going to do is just move this over. Can you see that? I'm going to move this over just so I got some separation. And I could put a couple fingers in there. But so I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol, spray it in there, and it should just come right off. And I'm just going to use a little tiny Allen wrench. Oh, it's just over there. Super professional. Hopefully I don't strip anything out on this one. That was my fear. I'm like, what if I strip out just everything and I just do everything textbook wrong? That would be embarrassing. Flying without a net here, guys, live. So nerve-wracking. No, that's good. I know you guys won't judge me if I make a mistake. So I'm just shooting some rubbing alcohol in there. Like I said, you could also just take compressed air if you've got a compressor. Behind the screen I got my 5-month-old daughter, so I don't want to run the compressor. And for the sake of filming.
Sure.
Yada, yada, yada. This is junior mechanic in the making right here. See that? That's called a freewheel. That's a derailleur. Can you say derailleur? Anyways. Okay, back to the build. Okay. So, I will probably, this is the rear brake. Let's see if I have enough space. So I get these little slots lined up. And then cable comes right out.
You gonna do a question?
Yeah.
Alright, what size bolts are used on the Cyclone housing?
On the Cyclone housing? Off the top of my head, I think they're M6s by like, there's 2 different sizes. Because on the, there's 2 different sizes. One is really long. I can't tell if they're M5s or M6s, but they're probably like 50 millimeters. So M5 by 50. I'm guessing. If I had some context, I could probably give you a better answer.
Alright, let's see. E-Bike Lane currently ships their 500-watt rear kit with a cassette. I'm wondering if I can just use one of its gears since the bike will be a single speed.
Yeah.
Or do I need to buy a separate freewheel with spacers?
So you want to know if you could just use it as a single speed? Is that what the question was?
If I can just use one of its gears since the bike will be a single speed, or do I need to buy a separate freewheel with spacers?
No, you could just use that. I mean, if it's not like a geared shifter up front, if I'm understanding correctly, if it's just a single speed bike right now, and you're getting a hub with a, either a cassette or a freewheel, yeah, you don't have to use those gears. You just want to make sure that the spacing is the same. So, if your rear hub spacing is 135, it'll be fine. You might want to adjust, well, you don't have a derailleur. So yeah, you should be fine. You just want to tighten the chain correctly so that it doesn't jump up or down chains. Or cogs, sorry. Doing too many things here, multitasking. So this is being a little fussy, getting off.
So what are your tips for that?
You just want to, I could probably spend more time in create more separation between the grip and the actual handlebar so that this gets in there deep. Because yeah, once rubbing alcohol is on there, it's just like, you could also use green, that green, what's it called?
Simple green?
Simple green. That also works really good, surprisingly enough. But rubbing alcohol I think is a little bit cheaper and it dries a lot faster. So I'm just going to take the front brake cable off as well. So I got the brake cables off. Got my display on. And then we can start putting stuff on. You can see like these builds, they go fairly quick. I mean, you could easily do this in, I don't know, a couple hours, depending on the bike. Yeah, obviously, I've done these ones a lot. So for me, it's a little bit simple, but if this is your first one, like you can see this isn't that difficult. I like to get the wiring harness out. Just be careful when you're opening this up. There's a lot of small parts in here for the speedometer pickup. There's like little bolts in here and a little wood screw for the speedometer sensor that could get lost. I've dropped that so many times and you're looking all over the floor for it. Yeah, it's a nightmare. Okay, so I get the wiring harness out, start to connect stuff, like the throttle. Again, there's no like necessarily right order to do things, but you don't want to do, some things you don't want to do in a certain order. I definitely recommend taking the pedals off and the crank arms off first, like you don't want to wait to do that, and I prefer. So this is a brand new bike, so it isn't that big of a deal. So we got the display, the throttle on. I'll put the brake levers on. People always ask me, why do I put the throttle on the left side? Generally, you can put it on either side. It's a universal throttle that comes with the kit. You could put it on either side. It's just generally, you're going to have more room on the left side. You're removing your triple chain ring, and usually you have a shifter right here that's gone bye-bye. And now you've got real estate for a throttle there. That's pretty much the only reason. It's pretty simple. Some people like having it on the right side because they're used to riding ATVs, things like that. Put it on the right side. You'll probably have enough room there as well. We got a little peanut gallery going on. Sorry about that, guys. Apologies all around. Some people just don't know how to film. Okay, so this is the right.
We're gonna go. Questions are here.
Okay. The helper's leaving. Uh-oh. Helper's leaving.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry about that, y'all. Very unprofessional crew. Okay, that one was on. Sometimes you gotta just loosen up these brake cables at the caliper so that you can get them on. Other times you can just force it on, just muscle it through. Like I was able to do. Sheer might. And once I get this all up, and then, take your time with cable management. Up top here, I know I get a lot of people saying like, oh, you didn't really cover cable management in your install video. My full video on install, I didn't really cover cable management. I keep meaning I'm doing a video for cable management because it really is, I would say half of the install is finishing it up, making sure cables are tight, neat. Yeah. And I didn't cover it, so people are like, oh, that was your finished video. It's like, no, that wasn't done. I was just showing you how to do it. I probably should have, in hindsight, included cable management all the way through because, in my opinion, it's just as important as the build because it can become a safety issue. So you can see I already got this all done. I just have to wire this in now, put in a battery, and I'll probably put in a gear shift sensor if we got time. But let's see what we got for comments. go to the comments section. Will I ever stock more powerful Cyclones? Possibly. The problem with Cyclones, I would say 50% of people who ordered Cyclones from me ended up returning them because they're not an easy install, and generally people were like, it's not working, or I can't get it on, and they would send it back. And it's totally understandable because I've done many of them and they're very frustrating. So it's hard for me, it's not a very financial good decision for me as a business owner to carry Cyclone motors because I almost lose money on them when I factor in shipping and customer support. So it's hard for me to want to offer them as much as I do. So I don't know. I'm still on the fence whether or not I'm going to continue carrying them or not. That baby didn't look real. It wasn't. That was a joke. That was like an animatronic one. Runs off of AA batteries. I don't know if you saw the battery cord coming out of it. Can you address the motor support brackets, please? I'm not sure what you mean. What do you mean by the motor support brackets? So these come with, there's an inner lock ring. Oh, this is so weird. It came with a weird, some of these motors come with these type of brackets now, which is weird. I haven't seen these before, so Bafang must be, they switched up their brackets. They didn't tell me about it. They didn't get the okay from me yet. So, interesting. But yeah, you slide on this little triangle piece. There's an inner lock ring that needs to be torqued down 50 to 60 Newton meters. In my opinion, you can't tighten it down too much. This is almost automotive grade stuff. And then there's an outer lock ring that just kind of is like a protector, decorative outer lock ring, and it just protects it. All right, I'm gonna do one more question and I'm gonna go back to the build. So Michael Patterson, you're looking at a hardtail, going to keep your bike around $500 to $600 range. Looking at the Trek Marlin, probably gonna, I'd say the Trek Marlin is going to be your best bet for quality, for in the $500 to $600 range. Trek Marlin, like the 5. That's, you can't go wrong with the Trek brand. You might be able to get some better deals on something, but in the $500 to $600 range, yeah, Trek Marlin, Giant Talon, even if you can't get any of those. Cannondale Trail are decent. Yeah, you might be able to get something like on a Specialized rock hopper, or you could look for something like, you know, a $900 to $1,000 bike used and pay $500 to $600 for it. There's always that route too. So many people are selling their bikes for good deals because they're like, I bought an e-bike. I don't need this bike anymore. They didn't realize that they could have converted that awesome bike that they had. So, yeah, I love it. Then up here, you see there's the brake cable and there's the brake wire. I always like to just throw little zip ties all the way around it. Just run this around here so it looks like one cable. And up here, you got the display, throttle, and the brake cutoff cable. Zip tie that as close as you can together. I don't know if you can see this, but I would just zip tie that and then run that along the brake cable as well. Makes it look super clean. And then I always, use existing cables to run electrical cables along it. You don't want to force cables, especially if there's cables in it. You don't want to create a tight bend on it because then this isn't going to be able to slide in that housing nice and easy. You want nice long elongated bends. So if you are planning on, I don't know, routing something differently, just keep in mind you want these cable housing to long swoops, elongated swoops. Sorry, I'm having trouble talking. I need some water. But yeah, so I'm gonna get some little zip ties. I'm gonna start zip tying it. start making it look clean. Let's get my bags of zip ties here. Like I said, do not cheap out on zip ties. I buy them by the 1,000, so I recommend you doing. You know, this will get me through half of a bike. You know, 1,000 zip ties, halfway through a bike. I'm kidding, but actually, you want to use skinny zip ties up top here, so then they don't stand out very much. I gotta see what my guys did with the zip ties. They hit them on me. Okay. Sorry, we're doing this live, no editing. Bear with me. So I like these little skinny zip ties. It just makes you get comfortable, guys. When you're doing this, you don't want to have back problems. I used to have back problems. You don't want to be, you know, standing in weird positions doing this stuff. But hey, I thank you guys for tuning in, staying with me, watching this, supporting the channel. It's really cool. Trying to spread awareness, showing you guys that installs are not that difficult. This is just, come out here Saturday morning, have your cup of coffee, maybe invite a buddy over. You guys will knock it out in no time. And I always recommend doing an install because, look at me, I'm putting hands and eyes on every part of my bike. And the bike is up, I'm literally looking at every part of it. And I'm probably, at the end of the day, I'm going to be touching every part of this bike. And just by doing this install, I'm going to have a better understanding of how bicycles work. You know, if I put a gear shift sensor in, I'm going to have to undo this, and I'm going to have to reset my derailleur. A lot of people, that's intimidating for them because they're like, oh my gosh, where are all these knobs and screws, and it won't shift right now. It's setting up a derailleur. Your shifting is very important. It's almost like knowing how to change your oil on a car because you're going to have to adjust your derailleur time and time again. These cables stretch, especially if you buy a brand new bike. A lot of times these cables stretch. You can buy cables that are pre-stretched, but I don't know, they could probably still stretch. And they just come out of adjustment here and there. You'll be riding and all of a sudden you hear something that's like, click, 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 and you're like, that's not good. It's in between gears. You don't want to ride like that because you're going to be damaging your cogs, your teeth on your cogs, or your chain. You're going to premature wear. So it's best to just keep your bike tuned in. And if you just learn to do it, spend 15, 20 minutes watching YouTube videos on how to take care of your bike, man, you'll make this thing last forever. And you're not going to be breaking chains. You're going to be able to do it all yourself. It's way cheaper to maintain a bicycle if you do it yourself. You know, love bike shops. We need bike shops. You know, if you don't feel confident doing your own repairs, take it to a bike shop. Support the local guys. And hopefully they'll be supporting us in return, you know, custom e-bike guys. But some of them are still set in their ways, old school, but a lot of them are coming around, which is really cool. So I'm just throwing zip ties around here. And then what I'll do afterwards is I'll take spiral wrap. Once I get all these cables nice and tight, I'll go around with spiral wrap and make it even cleaner. Okay, so got my wiring harness. I'm gonna start plugging these in so I can kind of get a lay of the land. And I always like to just see what it looks like before you zip tie stuff. I mean, these are cheap. Zip ties are like 2-3 cents a piece, something like that. I don't know. So you could always just cut them off and redo it, but I always like to just, hey, let's bundle it up. Let's see, how does it look like this? Can I run with this? Like it? All right, let's throw zip ties on it. Let's do it. So I always like to just throw zip ties on the bottom of this thing. Keep those cables just, you can't put too many zip ties on. That's what I always tell anybody I remember training or anything. You can't put too many zip ties on. Because yeah, these look gross. when I put them all out and it looks gross because it looks like scaffolding on the outside of a building. You know, these things, take a pair of flush cut pliers and come right up there, cut them off. So there's no knob at all, nothing. And this thing, it looks super inconspicuous. It looks way better already. And then once I put, you can either put like that braided tubing on, it's a lot more expensive. I think it does look nicer. I just use the spiral wrap because it's just way cheaper. But if you could get a good deal on that braided tubing, definitely take a look at that. I think it does look nicer. So, and I like to always run it along existing cables. So I'm going to find a brake cable that runs here, and I'm just going to run it along top there. And then once I do that, I'm going to throw some more zip ties up here to just kind of make this look a little bit nicer. Last thing, you don't want to have wires just kind of going everywhere. You want to bundle them all together. It just makes it look like it was an amateur job. And that's the end of the day. People are always like, don't do a custom bike, it looks like crap. It's like, well, you may have seen one guy who did a bike and it looked like crap because he didn't take the extra 15 minutes to do, cable management. And I bundle these electrical wires up. I know there might be some people out there that are like, ooh, you don't want to like be bending. There's copper wires in there. You don't want to be constantly bending them, like constantly doing that, because yeah, they will break. But if you do it once, it's all right. I've never had an issue with it. You can take issue with me later about it, but I've never had an issue with it. But yeah, in general, you don't want to like crease electrical cables and wires, like audio cables. If you're into that type of stuff, like you don't want to be creasing cables. So yeah, maybe I'll take the camera off and just kind of show you guys what I'm dealing with over here. Okay. So you can see here, I got the throttle cable, this, and I don't have anything really tightened down just yet. But I like to bundle these all together here and then just run them. And I'll bundle these up. Same thing on the other side. And then kind of find a confluence right there. And then I'm just going to start zip tying this to this existing brake cable here. So it just looks like one big thick cable. It doesn't look like like a rat's nest of a million cables. Because that's not what we want. That's when people start making fun of us and start hurting our feelings and saying DIY e-bikes are a joke. No, they ain't. You're a joke. And then we run away and we cry. Sorry, bad jokes. All right, I'm going to take a break, answer some questions. Let's see what y'all got. Let's see, are you guys critiquing me yet? Here's a good question. What do I recommend for the tuning on this build? Honestly, the 36 tooth, because this is a fat tire bike. So it really depends on what you're going for. It's a case study. Are you going for top speed? Are you going for like, I want to have good cadence, which is like 60 to 90 RPM at like 35 miles an hour? Then I'd want to go with a 52 tooth on this. Most people, that's not going to work. Most people are not cruising around at 35 miles an hour on a fat bike passing cyclists. I would say for most people it's going to be an off-road vehicle. I would go with the 36 tooth. It has that fat, narrow tooth design, so it grabs onto the chain. And I actually think you could, with a 36, you might be able to reuse this existing chain. Because if I go with the stock chain ring, which is 46 tooth, I have to put a new chain on, because this chain was meant to go with this one, which is, I don't know how many teeth, I'm guessing like 32. So if you go from a 32 to a 46, that's a lot bigger. Can't use that existing chain, so you gotta replace the chain, even though that's brand new. It's kind of a shame to replace the chain. I'm rhyming here. Yeah, 36 tooth for most people is gonna be the ideal chain ring. Honestly, for most builds. Otherwise, the 42 is my second favorite. If you go with 2, I generally try to ship those with 44 tooth. chain rings. By the way, if you guys want to build your own bike, go to johnnynerd.com. I sell all these components. I try to give you guys as much help as possible for free. But if you want to support the pirate ship, you guys can book a consultation. And obviously, if you buy the components from me, you're also helping support a really small business. And I just want to, you enable me to keep making videos like this, helping you guys. This is my passion. I love doing this, and I love that people are behind me. I think it's awesome when people are like, hey, I want to support you. I love it. And I'm like, yeah, it's awesome, man. I thank you guys so much. I love it when you guys want to support me over like Amazon, like Jeff Bezos. I know that, I think he's got enough money as it is. And I think that I could do a better job supporting. I know more about e-bike motors and components than Jeff Bezos does. So, like, you're just not going to get the same kind of support. And oftentimes my prices are competitive, if not the same, if not sometimes cheaper. Kind of depends on what you're going with. So yeah. How much do you program the motors you put on the bikes? Honestly, I don't really program them much unless it's requested. If somebody says like, I want to have a top speed of like 20 miles an hour, something like that, then I'll go in and program it. Otherwise, stock programming on these motors is good for about 90% of people. Unless you're a tweaker, and I don't mean that in like drug use, but if you're like a tweaker and you want to go in there and just, change all the parameters and everything, I don't change it. That's up to you to really dial it in. That's why custom bikes should be totally custom to you. You should go in and change the settings to exactly how you ride. And that's why it's kind of up to you. Every rider is different. And everybody, I do have customers that come in and they're like, I want to have you program it this way or this way. And each one is totally different. So I don't necessarily believe in having like a stock setting. I think the one that Bafang programmed these with is fine for 90% of people. But yeah, if you're not happy with how it performs when you get it, it's because it's not programmed to your liking. You could totally change everything on this. If it's too powerful, not powerful enough, for example, get the $15 program cable, which by the way, I think I am the cheapest program cable reseller. Double check it, 15 bucks. I think even for 28 bucks, something like that. I just buy them. I buy them by the carton. I get like so many of them because I think it's important to have. Anyways, back to the build. I'm gonna run this along this brake cable, and I still like using these thin ones. The only time I really use these is for these main cables, and I don't want them to move at all. And especially if I'm going to be putting the bundle underneath the bike, if it's going to be getting some road grime on it, these are just going to handle longevity better than these little tiny ones. And I'll get to this when I talk about bundling. You could either bundle it underneath the motor, or you could do it up. You could run it anywhere you want to hide the wires. If you're doing a lot of heavy, aggressive off-road riding, you might want to bundle it up here. If you're not going to be doing crazy, like aggressive off-road riding, personally, I think underneath here aesthetically looks better. So I like to put them under here, unless I know that the rider's doing just jumping logs and all that type of stuff. Then I would be like, all right, let's bundle it up. But at the end of the day, it's your call. Like, what do you want to do? This is your bike. Do whatever you want. That's what makes this thing awesome. And when you're done with this, you're going to be an e-bike expert. Just by building, you could say to people, hey, I built an e-bike. I made one from scratch, and it's high-powered. It's not locked in from the factory by Bosch or Yamaha or whatever. And people always ask me that. It's like, oh, which motor kit should I go with? Should I go with Bosch? Should I go with Yamaha? Unfortunately, they don't make motor kits for the aftermarket conversion kit. But even if they did, if they offered what they offer in their pre-made bikes, I probably still would not use it because they're just very lightweight and they're locked in. You can't change the setting on them. You can't personalize it, which is just a shame. So now this is pretty much done. I'm gonna go in and just kind of flush cut all these, and it's gonna make it look way nicer just by doing that. I'm always astounded by, you see all these things sticking out, you're like, man, this looks like garbage. But then you cut these off and it already makes it look twice as good. And then once I put spiral wrap on it, I think it looks even better. Okay, so that already looks cleaner. I mean, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, obviously. But just by having essentially 2 to 3 different cables going instead of 8, it just looks nicer. A lot of people just leave it there, or they'll just like wholesale zip tie all the cables. I recommend zip tie the cables together, make as few major cables as you can, and then I'm going to run this along here. You want to make sure that this cable does not rub up against any of these existing exposed cables, because that will in time rub against this rubber housing and it will expose it. So you just want to be mindful of that. It isn't very hard. Just make sure it's not rubbing up against something. And then what I'm going to do is feed this down. And one thing I like about this Northrock is that it has this little protective triangle piece right here. Got a cameraman now. It's got this little protective thing, so it's going to protect it against the wheel. A lot of times cables can come loose, and the tire can rub against cables and expose that and short stuff out. Then I'm just going to connect this. Bingo bango. I'll zip tie this up here. And honestly, like we're getting close to being done. I'm just gonna put the speed sensor on. I'll show you how to do that. Maybe I'll do that right now while I got a cameraman. So you're gonna take a little bag. Hopefully you didn't lose any of the screws yet. So this just gets plugged right into this. This goes right into the motor. I've had some people be confused about how this works. It just goes right in there. And then I like to go on the opposite side of the chain just because there's less moving parts that this thing can get caught up in. So I'm gonna go over here. I don't know if you can see or not. I don't want to finalize this just yet because the motor is pivoting, so just be mindful of that. You can see there's gonna be cable stretched, but I'm not gonna use it that much anyway, so I think this will be good. So what I like to do, let's put the magnet on. You want to put the magnet on a spoke on the side that you're working with. I have a feeling like I'm going to need some extra room here. Oh no. Half of your install is just going to be picking stuff off the floor that you drop, just a FYI. And this is weird. They use a T20 Torx bit, but it's got the tamper-proof, the little security feature, so you got to have one with the hole drilled out. That's why I sell these on my site. Because most people have, Torx bits, but they don't have the T20 with this tamper-proof feature on it. So I'm gonna go and use this. Come back over here. I'm gonna go about here. And I might need to fine tune the placement of this, but I'm just gonna get that nice and snug.
Show them what the bit looks like.
So you can see it looks like, you guys probably know what a T20 bit looks like, but it needs to have that hole cut out. It's the tamper-proof security feature. Why they decided to make that bolt that, I don't know if people were just stealing them all the time or what. Doesn't make much sense. Okay, so for putting on the speed sensor, what I like to do is maybe if you could come around here, I could show. So you want to make sure, so this, it's a little adhesive backing. I'm going to peel that off and it's going to stick on the chainstay here, like that. And then this is going to go in here. I like to make sure when I put this on, you can put it upside down. I don't know why I don't like this, because then the cable is up, it's in the eyesight and you can see it, and I think it looks gross. So I like to put it up like this so that this hangs down low. Does that make sense? Because now if you're looking eye level at a bike, you don't see any of these cables and you could run these cables underneath, so you just don't see this stuff. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the wheel, and I want this to be like a millimeter away, and this slides in and out. And that's what this set screw is, this little black wood screw. Once you find your distance, I don't know if you can see that distance that I have there, but that's pretty much what you want. You want it to just be like 2 or 3 millimeters away from it. It's hard to focus, but I think you guys get the idea. And then once I get that, I'm gonna try not to touch it. Take the black set screw and screw that in. And then I'm gonna pick stuff up that I dropped. And this is just a standard Phillips. These don't really slide around, so if you find your spot, kind of sticks there pretty good. Sorry, this is probably super frustrating watching. It's just as frustrating doing. Okay, and you want this to go in pretty good. People a lot of times stop right there when the screw is out. Nope, job ain't done. You got that to go in. You want it to bite. So you want it to go all the way in. Yeah, see, I don't know if you can see that, but that's in there. It actually gets kind of hard. So then what I'll do, and I like using the thicker zip ties here because I don't want this to ever move. So once I kind of get it, actually what I do is I feed it in from the bottom. Feed them both in, and I'll feed them in about yay far. These are the 8-inch zip ties. Get them at Home Depot. I sell them on my website. I know I just keep plugging myself. But hey, you guys want to support the community? More power to you. I love you for it. All right, so then we're gonna peel that off. And then I'm gonna double check, make sure the distance is still good. Yeah, that's right where I want. Okay, so I'm gonna press on that pretty hard. And then what I'm gonna do is I want this little knuckle to pretty much be at the bottom, so it hides pretty well, so you don't see it. You don't want to see your work. So just like that, because now you're not going to see that big knuckle if you're standing next to the bike. And then I want to make sure that it didn't move. It did move a little bit, so I'm just going to adjust it back. Okay. Yeah, that's good. And then again, just make sure that knuckle is like on the bottom. Make sure that's tight. It's awesome. Okay, now I'm gonna use some more of these big ones to just run this cable, and I want to get as close as possible. I don't want to put too much strain on this, but you don't want to have any slack here. A lot of times I see people, it's slack, and it's like, man, you're just gonna rub this against your wheel, and you're gonna rub that rubber coating off. And again, I'm putting the knuckles on the very bottom of the bike so it hides it. That's where you want the cable to meet. Cable's gonna be on the bottom, and I like to put a bunch here just because I don't want this thing ever to touch the tire. So I keep going. I'm gonna go all the way. And I really like to put one like right in this area here, because that's where it's gonna touch the tire. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so this is all, I'm working from here and from here towards the motor, if you've noticed. You don't want to start doing this and then have all excess everywhere else. I like to hide all the excess cables where people can't see it. So that's what I recommend. And I might even throw more here. You can't put too many zip ties on. You really can't, especially on a black bike. And you can get zip ties that match the color of your bike so they don't, you know, it just looks nicer. If you got a white bike, get white zip ties. And then it's just gonna look awesome. Okay, so that's how you do speed sensor. That's done. Really, the only thing left to do is the gear shift sensor. I've already showed you guys how to do that in another video, so I'm not sure if I necessarily want to do that. But I'll continue with this, and then I'll put on a battery. Like I said, this is gonna be a longer video. Sorry if it's a snooze fest. There's no explosions just yet. Well, I haven't put the battery on yet, so that's I shouldn't say anything yet.
Does anyone make a bash guard to protect motor and cables?
So there is. That's a great question. I get asked that a lot. There needs to be more people doing it. I've seen one. It was like on eBay, I think you could get them from. I don't know who the seller is, but yeah, why there isn't. See, people are always like, I want to get into the e-bike industry. If you're a machinist, make a bash guard. I'll sell it. Like, there's so many products that should exist that don't. So yeah, there is. Just Google it. There is a guy out there. I don't know. I've recommended it to a couple people, but I never heard follow-ups on, you know, if it actually work or not. And then I'm just gonna throw a long zip tie around here to hold the cable. One thing you don't want to do is zip tie all of these gear shift cables together. So you want to go in between the brake cable, gear shift cable, and the frame. And then again, I'm going to hide the knuckle. I like to put the cable in the knuckle because it just holds it where you want it to go. So I'm going to try to put that off to the side. Boom. That's awesome. Okay. Let's do the battery next.
One question. What battery do you recommend if I will commute to work 20 miles one way?
So that's a good question. People are always like, I want long range, or I want whatever. It really depends. There's a lot of factors. How much you weigh, how fast you plan on going, how much input you plan on, doing. Are you a peddler? Are you not a peddler? Peddler? Generally, I tell people about 20 watt hours a mile. So if you got 41 or 21 miles times 20, that's 420 watt hours. I wouldn't want to get a 420 watt hour battery because you're cutting it really close. You're not giving yourself leeway for, wind, certain things like that. So I would go with probably a 500 watt hour battery if you're doing 21 miles each way. And that's you riding about 19 miles an hour. And it depends on what kind of bike you have too. A bike like this is not going to be as efficient as like a giant Escape or like a road bike, something like that. So different factors. But figure between about 20 watt hours a mile is going to be, for most people, that's what you're looking for. Okay, so this is a battery. These are the Shark style. This is a 52 volt, 17.5 amp hour. I just got these in yesterday. Got 100. So yeah, people have been like, when are you getting more batteries in? You're out of stock. I'm like, I just got 100 batteries in yesterday. I got to go through them, add them to the website. Some of them are already up. But I like these ones. This is 900 watt hours. So if you're using 20 watt hours, this is going to be a 45 mile range. Obviously, if you're going faster, if you're using 30 watt hours, like you're doing 30 miles an hour, you can get about 30 mile range. That's with you pedaling with it, but doing 30 miles an hour, 30 mile range, it's awesome. Forget about it.
What is your opinion of CYC motors?
I like them. I'm still in the process of building. I'm actually building a Northrock one out of it. So stay tuned. To be determined. I'm still working on building one. I just need more time, but they seem really nice. I'm just getting some M5 bolts. You want to use M5 bolts with these, with the button heads, so that the battery can slide on and off. You don't want to use, I forget what those things are called, but you want to have like the smoothed out heads. And this, just take the battery, do a dry run. Make sure it's off when you're doing this. You don't want to be creating sparks or do something dumb. I like to see, where does the bottom almost hit? I like to put this as low as possible. Okay, right about there. And then I could look underneath. Okay, I need to use the second. So I just looked, I kind of tilted it, and I saw that this one aligns with the bottom one. So.
Are the U004 triangle batteries any good?
Are the what?
The U004 triangle batteries any good?
yeah, it just kind of depends on what cells you get in them. I've got some of those batteries coming with, I can't remember the name of the cells now. I can't remember if they're the 21700 cells now or not. I think they're the 21700 cells, but they're 28.8 amp hours at 52 volts. So they are monster ones. They're good. They're just, there's a difference between, you know, Sharks and those triangle battery packs. Those triangle battery packs are not removable. So you can't take them off and charge them inside a house or off the bike. And they're also, depending on how you have them fixed to the bike, they could be easily removed. Like if you just zip tied those triangle batteries to the bike, they could be easily stolen. But you could also get like Kevlar straps to put it on there, and yeah, thing's not going anywhere then. I need my screwdriver. Here it is. Generally, I like using these with the M3 heads, by the way, but I don't have any. They're being delivered hopefully this week, so I just have ones with Phillips heads, which work just fine. And you definitely can use Loctite on here. I probably should. I'm getting ahead of myself. I would throw a little dab of Loctite on here, just so that it doesn't get shooken loose. If you're road vibration and you're riding, I would throw a little dab of Loctite on there, which I have. It's over there. Do as I say, not as I do, I guess. And then this thing could just feed right down through the triangle. And at this point, I could lock this up. I think I'm going to do that because all my cabling is going to go up here. It's not going down below. So I'm just going to go ahead and tighten this up. So I'm going to put on that little triangle and then the interlock ring. And there is a little arrow on here. Just make sure you're tightening it with the arrow.
Watt-hour on a standard mountain bike will do 42 miles. I weigh 190 pounds and am more of a pedaler rather than using throttle.
40.
48.
What are the numbers again?
Here.
I think you mean 480 watt-hour. 42 miles. If you want to do 42 miles at 20 watt-hours a mile, it would be 840 watt-hours is what you would need. So, yeah. So Vince, if you want to get 42 miles, you're going to need 840 watt-hour capacity, which would be like pretty much like a 48 or 52 volt 17.5 amp hour pack. That's 42 mile range. That's going to be around like the 900 watt hour. Okay, on there. You could use the Bafang install tool. I like to just, I'm a time saver. And again, this is where people are going to be like, you're doing what? What are you doing? It's hanging by his neck. Sorry, a little too graphic. But no, this is the 1/2 inch impact driver. Use this tool. I got these from Empowered Cycles. I used to get them from SF Bikes before they went out of business, and I got these for $4 a piece. I should have ordered every single one that they had because now they're expensive. I tried finding a local tool maker to make some of these, but they wanted like $60 a piece to make them. I was like, what? That's insane. So if you're a tool maker out there and you want to collab with me on making a tool, let's do it. I just don't have time. I was calling out to tool makers and all that. Oh, before I do that, I like to take these 2 bolts. I'm getting ahead of myself already. So there are there's 2 bolts. They're M6s that are going to go on first. I like to put these on first. These 2 little black bolts. They go on first. They already got Loctite on them. Oh, these are torques. Interesting. Yeah, it helps if this is loose when you're doing this, because then it gives you some wiggle room. I know, I'm just describing what I'm doing now. This one is a Torx. Normally these are M6s, so you just use your 5mm. But some of these kits, I think these are T20s. So you could use that same T20 Torx bit that you used. Put on the speed sensor. And you always want to make sure this is up all the way when you're tightening this stuff down. So once I'm starting to get some grab, I want to make sure this, I'm holding the motor up against the frame with one hand. Once this gets tight, this will probably hold itself up, actually.
Roll-off hubs? Is that a roll-off?
Roll-off.
Do you think they would be a decent climber? What is the lowest gear equivalent of a roll-off? 32 teeth?
You know, I don't actually know the gear ratios offhand of the roll-off hub. But short answer is yes, they will be a great climber because whatever the gear ratio is, I think those are like 11 speeds. Either 11 or 14, I can't remember now. But you could just make, you know, the chainring up here smaller to amplify the roll-off gear ratio. So you could make it whatever you want. Are you gonna take it off and bring it around here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll show you guys real quick. I got that tightened in. And now I'm just going to take this in. I'm going to make sure this is up all the way. Tighten it. You can see that's loud. Didn't want to do that when the baby was here. You just want to make sure this thing is on there super tight. And you could try by pushing on this. If you could push this down, it's not on tight enough. This thing's just going to come flopping off. Again, you could also put Loctite on here as well. Generally, using this on its highest setting, this is a Ryobi. It doesn't put out tons of torque. I would not want to use an air tool on this because, yeah, that's too much. This is, for good or bad, it's a cheap Ryobi impact, and so it doesn't put out tons of power, but it puts on enough to keep this thing from not going anywhere, which is kind of what you want. So now that I've got this, I could connect the battery connector right here. These are Andersons. A lot of, depending on where you buy from, they may either put bullet connectors on or XT60 or XT90. Everything that I sell and I put out has Anderson, and I put the 45 amps on. A lot of times motor kits come with bullet. I'll just cut them off and I'll put the 45 amp connectors on there. But so I like to connect this without the battery on. So now that's live, that's ready to go. And then I could finish up doing this cabling here, but if I'm going to put a gear shift sensor on, I'm going to put a gear shift sensor on first, and that way I could bundle these together. And this is where the gear shift sensor goes in, so it gives you plenty. People always wonder, what's this extra cable? This is for your headlight. This is a 6-volt out, and it'll power the included headlight. If you buy from me, I put a headlight in there. So you could install this, like on this bike, you definitely can, because it's got the thread for the fender. And you have to provide your own bolt and nut, because every bike is different. So there's no universal hardware with this, unfortunately, but you just have to find a way to fix this to your fender. And it comes with a headlight, which is nice. And it's controllable by the display.
So while we're on this, Manny K asked a while ago, please can you address the motor support brackets?
Yeah, I don't understand what he means by that. Is it this?
Manny, if you're still here, ask again.
Yeah, I don't know what your question is. This is a newer design that they started using the motor brackets.
I meant Luna cycle brackets. Hose clamps?
Oh.
I don't know, right here.
And if you're talking about for the thing, if you're talking about the torque arm, yeah, that'll help you from having the motor swing out. Or, like I said, you could just use an impact wrench and put this thing on so tight that it's never going to move. But, yeah, if you want to have the peace of mind, you could buy a torque arm that mounts onto here and then it attaches to the frame. Yeah, I think Unicycle sells it. You could use that, too. But, yeah, like I said, I've never had issues with this coming loose when I put it on with an impact. Which I started doing, and I've done it on hundreds with no issues. Again, I wouldn't want to use it on an air compressor, like an automotive grade. If you work at an auto shop, be very careful with that. But like I said, I got a low grade Ryobi 1/2 inch, and it works just great. So I'll put the chainring on.
So Beer Hounds Beer Reviews says, I forgot to put the spacer behind my Freewheel. Now I need the 12 spline remover tool with a bigger open end. Where can I get that tool?
Google. Find a place that has it. Just Google what tool you need. You could probably go to parktool.com actually and just order direct from Park Tool. That's what I always like doing, just order direct from them. So yeah, find out which tool you need, because each one of these is different. You also need a chain whip. I actually do sell the chain whips, which you probably, you can't see, there's too many bikes in here, but I got one hanging on the wall. You're going to need well, if it's a Freewheel, you don't need a chain whip. You'll just need, the little tool. I don't know if I have one here or not. Kind of looks like this a little bit. If you have like a cassette, you use something like this. It kind of goes in there.
He says he has the chain whip, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just find out. It's probably like the FR 5.2 is what you're going to need if it's just like a standard cassette. So then we're going to take these little bolts and put them in here. The other cool thing about this is the Bafang 44 tooth. You can see it's a 2-piece chain ring and spider ring. If you have a belt drive, people are always like, how do I convert a belt drive? I have a belt drive. How do I do it? Get the 44 tooth. You could disconnect this as long as your belt drive has a 5-tooth hole pattern. I think this is 104 BCD hole pattern. You could mount this spider onto the belt drive, and boom, you could put this on a belt drive. So then I'm just going to go and...
So the Bafang brake sensor installation process seems a little hit and miss. What are your thoughts on the Tripwire e-brake product as a substitution?
For a hydraulic, you said?
He didn't say.
I'm assuming he means for hydraulic, because the mechanical brakes they're bulletproof, they're spot on. Hydraulics, yes, they can definitely be a pain at the best. That's why I started carrying a hydraulic brake set, especially if you're thinking about upgrading to hydraulics. I recommend just buying it as a kit, like with the calipers, levers, whole, like everything. It's just going to make your life so much easier. It is much better to have them integrated, the cutoffs integrated, so you don't have to go and try to, dial it in, because it is a pain. I need to find my 4. I like to just put all my tools wherever I can. And I can put the battery on, so you guys can see what it looks like with the battery on. Hopefully I got that good. And I like to keep this battery off so it's not sparking or anything like that. That's 3. And you're going to be spending a lot of time looking on the floor for your tools as well. That's what what did I use the 4 for? Well, I think I've got backup 4s. Yeah. I always have backup tools. And so let's put this on. I'm going to have to put a new chain on. How much time are we at?
It's like almost 70 minutes.
Okay. Well, you can see the install is almost done. If I didn't want to put a gear shift sensor in, the install would essentially be done at this point. If I just put if this matched up, I can just put this on, call it a day, do a little bit of cable management down here. So you can see it doesn't take much. That was 70 minutes with me taking a lot of questions, you know, taking time. Doesn't take a whole lot of time, but I'm gonna go a little bit further. I'm gonna put the gear shift sensor on. I'm gonna dial in a little bit of things here, do a little bit more cable management. Probably got about another 45 minutes. So yeah, it's what, 2 hours on a, you know, if you're cruising and you got all the tools and you got a good bike stand and you got all the tools you need, you don't need to like look around for them. Install. You could, if I was like focused, I wasn't doing this, I could probably do this in about an hour and a half. But I'm getting distracted. I got my bird brain going. And I think I do want to show you how to do the gear shift sensor install right now, because this is a lot of people get a lot of questions about. You need to take off the end cap here to that cable. This one's on there good. Just want to like pinch it so it goes the other way. A lot of times I end up just using a new gear shift cable. They're super cheap. They're like $3. But if it is brand new, so what I like to do is make sure you're in the lowest gear. So this is as slacked out as possible. And then we'll just loosen this.
Your shot assistant's crying.
Pull this through, and I'm going to put the gear shift sensor right there. And then the gear shift sensor comes with a little plastic piece, and that goes into these here. So it kind of holds this right in there. And then this cable, now this cable's too long, so I'm going to cut that. I'm going to want to cut it. I want to keep this cable kind of straight. You don't want to have these bends being wonky like this, because that's putting pressure on this cable. All right, so I'm going to feed this cable up. I'm just going to connect it so I don't have to keep playing with it. And then I'm going to show you guys how to readjust your cassette on there after you do this, because that's super important. So actually, I'm going to cut this, and I don't want to have the cable in here, so I'm going to pull this out a little bit. I like to put some pressure on these. You can see this is like bent. I like it, so I like to just put some pressure on it and smooth it out, straighten it out a little bit. It's going to go in and out of these cable housings a lot easier. Okay, I think it's a little bit better. The end is a little bit frayed, so I may need to just chop the end off when I put it back in, but we'll see. So I'm going to pull it out, try not to go all the way out with it. I'm going to take this cap off because I'm going to try to reuse it. And now to cut cable housing, you need to use a cable housing cutter. So, cable housing. I do carry these on my website. If you want to help support the cause, you know, if you want to fight Jeff Bezos, or not support him at least. I know that he's going through a hard time. He went through a divorce, and he probably needs a couple more $1 billion. So I understand if you want to support him instead of me, because I am not going through a divorce. I'm just a little guy. Pity me. Okay, so I'm gonna take a look at this. I want it to end right about there. Okay. Bye, yay. Okay, cut that off. I'm gonna feed this cable back through. I want to make sure. And then I'm going to reuse that little black cap. And if I can't get these splayed ends to sit down, I'm just going to chop off just that little tiny bit, just where they're being difficult. And then I'm going to go sit on those little ends that I just cut off. I'm going to sit on those in about a day or two. And I come home and I got metal splinters everywhere. I'm like, how the hell do I have a metal splinter here? It's because I cut them off and I put them in there. That's how I get them. All right. So I'm gonna put that in there. I'm gonna just feed this through. What I like to do, and I have a video up on gear shift installation as well. It's a little bit more concise. It's an edited video, so if you want to just get to the end of that. And what I like to do is kind of put pressure on it and twist in the way that the cable is braided. Sometimes you can get it to go through, which I did. Woo. Other times, this cable will just, it'll get mangled. You can't reuse it, or you can. I strongly recommend not reusing it though, but I know a lot of people do. And you'll see like one strand will be off. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, that's good. I like that. Okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm going to. Sometimes I don't like going around the kinks. Sometimes I don't like coming through that. If I take the end cap off, and it comes through a lot easier. I'm just gonna reinsert that. Put this here. Put the cable through. And what I like to do before I start trying to dial in all this stuff, tighten these all up. Tighten it down here. Make sure they're tightened. And up here at the shifter, I'm also going to tighten that as well. So just ready tidy it. That's going to take all the slack out of here. And then, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on this, keep pressure on this, and I'm going to come up here to the shifter, and I'm going to hit the right. I'm going to just kind of go through all these. I still need to tighten these up. But I'm going to go through this all while holding pressure with my left hand here. Do that a couple times, and that's going to take out pretty much any slack that's in here. And I'm going to make sure that I have tension on it the entire time. And then I'm going to feed it back through this little nut, whatever it's called. Tight it. I don't want it to be too tight, but I'm just keeping pressure on it. I just don't want it to be like tons of slack. And then this is easier if you have this is easier if I pedal on, so let's do that. These are handed, these are the left-handed ones. I don't want to put the left-handed crank arm on the right. A lot of people do that. Check it, it says R right there. R goes on the right side. And just be careful doing this because none of this is like bundled in. You probably want to do this absolutely last because you don't want cables to like rub against tires or get caught in the chain ring, etc., etc. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click up, and I don't think this is going to go all the way to the top because I think I need to resize the chain. No, it does. So it does, goes all the way into that smallest one, or my smallest gear, which is the biggest gear, ironically. And then as I go down, I'm going to do one at a time, and it should sit in one gear at a time going down. And it is. So I just got lucky. That one, it shifts perfectly going in. But let's say it wasn't jumping down, which I'll do right now. I'll just loosen this up a little bit. So let's say I didn't keep enough pressure on it. So I'll put this in. You want to put that back on the tripod? Is anyone watching this still?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's hanging out on Saturday. I like it. Okay, so let's say that's probably won't shift into the lowest gear now. Yeah, okay, so now it's not going into the lowest gear. Like, what the heck? What I want to do is use my barrel adjuster. I never want to use my limit screws. You never want to mess with these unless there's damage occurring or something. But if this is a brand new bike, Never mess with these. These are set from the factory to be exactly where they should be. You don't need to mess with that. Just mess with your barrel adjuster. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna lefty loosey makes the chain go towards the bike. So I'm gonna just keep doing that until it goes into that. There we go. It's in that lowest gear now. That's pretty much it. Now I can double check it, make sure that it goes one at a time. And let's say if it wasn't going down fast enough, I could do small adjustments. You know, righty-tighty is going to make it want to come this way. Just do that a little bit at a time. But anyway, so this is, the gear shift sensor is now installed. I'm going to throw some zip ties on right here to just keep it along that cable. Again, buy the 1,000 pack of these. Get a buddy to do one of these with you and split the 1,000 pack. It'll be worth it.
All right.
So I'm just going to throw some zip ties around here. And now I can take my main wiring harness cable. I want to combine these two. I don't like to have two separate cables running. So I'm going to zip tie these together now. And I apologize if you guys can't see it. My camera person had to go attend to a baby. Very unprofessional. Who brings their baby to work? Alright, so I'm just going to keep tying these together. Alright, and then I think I'm going to take a break, read a couple comments. See, sometimes you get a bad zip tie. Can't go crazy with zip ties. Honestly, like if I see anything where like cables are coming apart like that, zip tie it. I don't want to see any separation. I want all this to just look like one cable. That's the difference between an amateur job and a professional job. Just look at that. It's all closed up. It's one solid thing. And I'll do that everywhere. But I'm always telling the guys that I'm like training is just, these things are cheap. Even if you went through $1 of zip ties, I don't care. If it looks awesome, it's totally worth it. It's worth the $1. You already forked over $1,000 to do this. Spend over the other $1 on zip ties, or however much it is. I know these are more than $1, but you know. Okay, so I got all the cable management done from here. I'm gonna bundle this all up down underneath here, because I just like that. I like doing that better. So I'm going to throw some zip ties here. Again, I want the knuckle to be on the back of the bike. That's where it's going to hold it. So make that tight. Just keep doing that. And then I'm going to go through, cut all these zip ties, and it's going to look way better. Like as soon as I cut it, it just instantly looks awesome. Another thing too is you want to like turn these handlebars to make sure that nothing is like too tight before you get everything, you know, buttoned down. Okay, let's see. What kind of questions we got? Got any gold mines? And then underneath here, I'm just gonna grab it. Kind of like a ponytail, pretend like you got a man bun, and just grab it. What do you do when you get a man bun? You grab it.
All right, bike ranking for E-conversion. Hardtail, for full suspension, fat bike, best or better tire size. You have a video about that, right?
Kind of. What was the question? Best bike for conversion?
Bike ranking for E-conversion. Hardtail, full suspension, fat bike, best or better tire size.
Okay, so this is super subjective. It's, you know, it's obviously like a case study. What's best for you? But in general, if I'm going to go by numbers, probably for 90% of the people, and I've got videos up on this, hardtail mountain bikes are the way to go. Get a good quality hardtail mountain bike. And that's the way to go, because they're so outfittable to be almost anything you want to do. If you get one that can accept up to a 3-inch tire, you can make it almost like a fat tire bike. Or conversely, you could put skinny road tires on it and turn it into a good commuter. And almost all hardtail mountain bikes, in my experience, can accept a rear rack, like a good rear rack that could accept like a 50-pound load. And now what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing these 2 wires and I'm kind of pinching them. I want them to be tight. I'm gonna get all cables in there. So I'm just pinching them, and then I'm gonna cinch that down. Can you see what that looks like? Now it's nice and tight on there. And I'm just gonna throw some zip ties around there. And I'm using the thicker zip ties down here because I don't want these to break or to come apart. And these are rated at, heavier poundage. These are like 40 or 50 pound load zip ties.
Does the BBS HD controller have to be programmed for 52 volts?
No. Well, if you're using a 52 volt battery, I would. Most of my BBS HD motors controllers, I actually specify so that their firmware is 52 volts. So that way you don't have as many issues. A lot of times you get like voltage compatibility issues where if it's a 48 volt battery, so you can see I'm just going to like crunch this, and then that's going to look nice. It's a nice small tight bundle. I'm going to throw one in here, and I'm going to fold it again. So a lot of the 48 volt motors, they don't like the voltages that a 52 volt battery can put out. So I try to specify when I order my HD motors that they're 52 volt rated. The trade-off is that they are 28 amp max. They're not 30 amp, but the longevity, just your user errors, not going to happen, and the motor's going to last a long time. And the 2 amps, you're not going to miss.
Best chain for a 9-speed, money, no object.
E9, get the KMC E9, and I do sell those on my website if you want to support the cause. Yeah, definitely. So that's pretty much what I like. Now I'm gonna cut all these, get rid of the rat's nest. I mean, you're never gonna see under here. You could go as detailed as you want. You could I know some people will find stuff to cover all this stuff up. Sure, you could do that. I mean, it's fine. I generally don't, but I just like this to be up tight against the motor. Yeah, and you can see the chain ring is going to hit anything before the cables get snagged on anything. So I consider this a win. And then at this point, it's just kind of finishing stuff up. Like I'll just find some parts where there's any separation of cabling and just throw another zip tie on it. And then I just need to tighten up the handlebars, throw some spiral wrap on it, and we're done. I don't need to replace the chain. The existing chain on this works fine with the 44 tooth, which is awesome. This is the 100 millimeter BBS HD. Fits perfectly with this bike without any spacers. So it really is a match made in heaven. The one drawback on this bike, if you're thinking about doing this bike, is if you want to add rear racks to it, it doesn't come with rear rack mounts, which is really dumb. So if you buy one from me and you want one on there, I install rack mounts on it so that you could put a big rear rack. And I do sell the rear racks. You need the ones made for fat tires, and I do sell those on my website, johnnynerdout.com. If you need any help with your builds, I love doing consultations. All morning today, I thank you to the people that I did consultations with. I was doing them all morning up until 15 minutes before this video. I was like, okay, I gotta cut this call short, unfortunately, because not short, I didn't cut it short, but I just couldn't go long with them. Sometimes they go a little bit long, but I'm like, I can't go long because I got a live video I gotta go do. And then I'll put a cable cap on here. I just like to go through, as long as it's up here, do it while it's up in the stand. Because once you start riding it, you're like, oh my god, I started riding it. You're not gonna want to put it back up in the stand and finish all this stuff. If you're anything like me. And like once every couple months, I'll put my bike back up in the stand to upgrade stuff. But, cool. So I'm still just going around, just cutting all these tabs off. Gonna make it look nice and clean. Tighten up these handlebars. You want your handle grips, so I'll do this on the ground. I like to do this on the ground when you're standing on it because you want to tighten these so that your hands are straight down. Wherever you are at, you want your wrists to be straight. You don't want them to be like this. You don't want them to be like this. That's going to put so much strain on your wrists. So you want these to be straight. That's the most comfortable position. No matter where your handlebars are, if you've got risers, if you have whatever, you want your wrists to be straight in the resting position. So that's why when I get this down, I'll tighten this up. And then, so we can turn the battery on, power it up, press and hold this for 2 seconds. This is the 500C display. I like going with these. So you can see, boom, boom, boom. Displays on the left. So I'm gonna press and hold that, get into the display, and I'm gonna press menu. I'm gonna just change this right now to Imperial. Battery, I want to change that to 52 volt. It's going to be a little bit more accurate with the battery gauge. Still is not super accurate. It's just the nature of these things. If you really want to get accurate, go off of the voltmeter on these things. And the voltmeter is actually pretty accurate. The display on this is 1919, which is just plus, minus, which is nice and easy. The wheel size on this is a 26-inch. Speed limit, you could set it. I like to just keep it at 99, keep it unlocked. So a lot of the other question people are like, hey, when I buy a motor from you, is it unlocked? Or what do I have to do to unlock it? They're unlocked. Some suppliers do lock them. They go in and actually lock them, but I don't. I like to set the assist level to 9, but you could have 9, 5, or 3 levels of assist. Not that that changes the power level, it just changes the gradation between each one. I like to be able to fine tune it, so I'll put it on 9, and then that's it. This thing's ready to roll. You can upgrade these things these are cable brakes. You can upgrade them to hydraulic brakes. I carry those on my website as well for $89. And they're hydraulic sets. And they have the inline electric brake cutoff on there, but they really do add a lot more stopping power. But as is, these brakes are fine. They work just fine for probably most people. So then here I'm gonna finish this build up. I'm gonna put some spiral wrap on it. You know, you get these from Home Depot for like $3. Again, it's just those little things that are gonna make the build look better. And I like to just go around anything that's has multiple wires. And this is probably even too big of a diameter wrap. You could go with the really small stuff that really hugs it. But again, whatever you want. There's more ways to skin a cat to build a bike. So I'm just gonna go. And you could do as much of the spiral wrap as you want, or as little. I just like to keep this, make it look nice. Oh, that almost came out perfect. I just don't like to see like a bunch of cables. And you know, if you want to go super tight on this, you can. If you want to have a little bit of, if you're okay with that, being able to see a little bit, it's all your, how anal are you? There we go. There's no wrong answer. More anal the better. .com. Don't go to that. Don't click on that site. I didn't realize that after I said it. Okay. Okay, and I'm just going to cut it. Cut off the excess. Guys, that's pretty much it. I'm going to take it down. Oh, I didn't put the crank arms on or the pedals.
Not important.
Yeah, who needs that? You get a throttle. So if I was sitting on it, seat down a little bit. So I'd want it to be, like this. You know, when you're pulling on it. So I'm going to tighten that all up. Actually, I might want to tighten up this brake first. Tighten the brake up, and then you can just swirl around. Gear shift lever. Let them move. And then the display and the throttle are both free. I should probably trim this off so I don't accidentally hit the throttle. Embarrass myself on live YouTube. Just want to make sure there's good. And this does not need to be super tight. I like to have this just tight enough so that it doesn't move. Otherwise you'll just break stuff. Same thing with this. I like to tighten this down so I can still move it in case I need to adjust it on the fly. So I like to do it so it's just barely, if I put some pressure on it, it's not going to break off. But that's that. Okay, let's put on these crank arms real quick and call it a day. And is there any other questions right now?
Not really. A lot of talk about regen, brakes. Let's see.
Regen brakes are not really a thing on e-bikes because there's just not enough inertia for it to make it worth adding that feature. Motorcycles, cars, totally worth it. Totally makes sense because there's just so much force and you can recapture a lot of that energy. E-bikes, it's not, in my opinion, it's just not really a thing. I forgot to put on this locking cap too. This one just goes on not super tight. It just kind of goes on. I put it on there and then I grab the install tool, which comes in the kit. And if you buy the kit from me, I actually include this kit. You buy it from places like Bafang Direct USA, they charge you $20 for this thing. They nickel and dime you. That's insane. And by the way, it's Bafang Direct USA. It's not Bafang. They're not affiliated with Bafang whatsoever. So they have nothing to do with it. Just a couple guys who came up with a misleading business name. They're not enthusiasts. They don't do conversions. Cool. So that's on. Now I'm going to
So Todd Thompson, I don't know if you're still on, but we're gonna. My BBS 02 with a 48 volt battery cuts out around 20 miles per hour. My 850C is set to 99 miles per hour. Any thoughts?
Did you do any programming to it at all? 20 miles an hour, that's really slow. There's probably something in the firmware. Even 48 volt, you should still be hitting, if not 30, close to it. I mean, that's assuming that you're a big guy.
Said no.
Interesting, no programming. I would check your programming. I would get a program cable, plug it in, and just see what it's set at. See what your settings are. So for crank arm bolts, I put them in really tight. I know some people they're afraid. I put them down. Like I do like that. Do a and then these things don't come loose on you when you're riding. If you've ever had a crank arm come loose on you while you're riding, it sucks. That's all I have to say about it.
All right, question. Can I start at level 9 assist with a 52 tooth Lucky chainring in first gear without stressing the chain too much?
In first gear, yeah. In your lowest gear, I mean, going on 9, that's a lot. That's like on your car if you were to just floor it. It's the equivalent of flooring it on your car. So saying, is that bad for your car? Not necessarily. It's not good for your car. If you do it every single time you take off, yeah, it's not good for your car. It's just putting a lot of strain on stuff. But, you know, if you do it every once in a while, it's all right. All right, putting the pedals on, left. Lefty is tighty. So you want to go lefty loosey to tighten it on your left, non-drive side. The first time you ever do one of those, you're like, why is the left side not going on? I think they gave me the wrong sided pedal. Right side is normal. Righty tighty.
So Tesla Fudge asks, are you acquiring Northrocks to build out for folks, or are these owners having them shipped to you?
No, so honestly, I just get these from Costco and I just build them. I don't have a dealer agreement with them or anything.
But you're pre-building it for people,
Yeah,
not for
mostly-
customers.
Yeah, most of these I build and I'll put them on my website for sale. So if you want to buy this one, for example, go on my website or message me if you want to buy this one. If you want it customized, like, so I sell pre-made e-bikes. If you go on my website, they're custom bikes that I built. But the good thing about that is they can be customized whatever you want. You're like, hey, I want this, but I want a rear rack. I want to have headlights on it. I want to have the horn. I want to have blah, blah, blah. I'll build it out exactly how you want it. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of price increase, but generally, they're still way less expensive than if you were to buy one. Like if you were going to buy one from Quiet Cat or something, like you wanted a fat bike, a hunting fat bike or something. You're looking at $4 or $5 grand for something similarly spec'd that is not nearly as customizable. These are all standard bicycle components. So you could upgrade anything you want here. You want hydraulic brakes? It's $100. You want a suspension front fork? You know, that's like another $150 unless you want to go with like a Bluto. Those are like $600 or $700, but those are super nice suspension forks. Everything on this is super easy to upgrade. You could put a dropper seat post on it if you wanted. You could put a, you know, whatever. Make it your own. But I do sell these bikes on my website. So thanks for asking.
All right. Do I have to use the spacer before installing the Freewheel, or can I use the limit screw to delete the lowest gear to keep the derailleur from scraping the motor?
Yeah, you can use your limit screws if you're, you know, obviously if you need the chain to not go into a certain gear, then mess with that limit screw. But generally, you know, for bikes that don't need, you know, special use cases like it sounds like you have, you don't want to be messing with those limit screws. But yeah, you could just use the limit screws to make it essentially like a single speed. Or if you just wanted this to be a 3-speed, you didn't want it to go off anymore, use that limit screw, put it up on a stand, pedal it until you and just adjust those limit screws until they're only hitting the gears you want it to go to. And so now the brake cable, I need to adjust that because it's just bottoming out. So I'm just gonna pull, put a little tension on it, tighten it up, check it. That's a little tight. You want your brake cable to be bottoming out about halfway in between its resting position and the handle grip. That's a little loose, a little sloppy, what I like. So I'm just going to tighten it a little bit. So all I'm doing is just pulling on this, treating it, then tightening it down. So I could just loosen that, pull the cable tighter. If I want it to go tighter, yeah, that's about where I want it. That's good. And sometimes people will hear their brakes rubbing, and it's like, eek, 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 like that. Perfect example. Oh no, that's actually the zip tie that it's rubbing on. But sometimes your rotor will be rubbing your caliper, like on your brake pads. And it's just because your caliper needs to be repositioned. And that's easy to do. You just loosen these two bolts right here. And then you could in between your pads and the rotor when it's in its resting position. So yeah, that's it. That's the Northrock build. I'm trying to think, is there anything else always lock down your battery too before you ride. You don't want to ride, like if I just did that right now and I went for a ride, that would be bad news because this is loose. So I'm going to tighten that down. All right, any last minute questions?
Anything that can be done apart from filing the motor casing when it hits against the chainstay?
Filing down the motor casing? You never want to file down the motor casing. I've seen people file down the motor spindle to make it fit into the bottom bracket. Never file down the motor. File down the bike, but if it's hitting the chainstay, don't file down the chainstay. You would want to use a spacer, like a 2.5 millimeter spacer, just to bump the motor out so that it's not hitting your chainstay. You can see this bike has plenty. Geometry on this is perfect, and there's no real issues with install on this. And everything just is super easy to work on. But if this did hit right here, this is the chainstay. If that did hit that, I would just put a little bump, a little spacer in between on the motor spindle against the frame just to bump it out a little bit so it's not hitting. And then if I had to bump the chain ring in, like if the chain line got too far out, buy a Lecky, either a 40 tooth or a 42 tooth, something that brings the chain line back in to correct having to bring that back in. And again, if you have more questions like this, I do consultations. Happy to answer you guys. I can help fix your bike if you want to do a virtual consultation. Do like this, it's just like a Zoom call. People take their phone. Hey, I'm having an issue with their bike. Right here, show it to me. I've been talking nonstop. I need to take a sip of water real quick. But I can usually just guide you, throw it up on a bike stand. I could talk you through, shifting problems, pretty much anything. Any last question, or should that be the last question? We've been going for a long time.
I don't see any other questions. Let's see. Should be a sip of beer. Dazzle.
Congratulations. Cheers. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. But all right, guys. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for hanging on a Saturday. I don't know whether it's morning or night or evening, but I definitely appreciate all your love and support. You guys have been huge. I love the community that we've gotten here. I love that people just, when I talk to them on the phone, it's like we've been friends forever and I've just met them. So yeah, it's a really cool bike thing. And one day the goal is, my wife and I want to start putting together community events where we could do meetups, whether it's like bike camping trips or whatever, or we could just travel the country and just do, bike meetups and maybe make that a video segment where we just see the coolest bikes in each area and, see people's custom made e-bikes and I don't know, do hangouts. I think it'd be really cool. So anyways, thanks for hanging out, guys. Appreciate it. Keep riding.
This is going to be the awkward goodbye because I don't know how to stop this.
Okay, I'll just just dance it until it goes away. Northrock XCO.